people should inform themselves about what's going on, because though you can't find out everything, you can find out a lot more than most people know. And it's amazing to me the number of people who would pay a couple of $100 to come to a weekend with a person like myself to learn about psychedelics, when a couple of $100 would get you quite far in a bookstore, and the public library is a marvelous resource for this stuff. So I hauled some titles off my own bookshelf, and I'll go through them. This is by no means all. I just simply chose books that I thought were either important to the field or I felt would be fairly easy for someone to obtain if they wanted to look into these matters. This one, some of you may know. This is probably the easiest to obtain and the most compendious. It's Plants of the Gods by Richard Evans Schultes, who's Professor Emeritus of Botany at Harvard. And this is basically the distillation of his life's work. It's filled with pictures. It has all kinds of information arranged in this kind of table form where you can look up a plant, get a notion of what it looks like, what family it belongs to, what its chemical constituents are, and so forth. And it has a very good bibliography and a chemical appendix. So this is around and highly recommended. If you want to go slightly deeper than that book goes, this is the academic version of the same book. This is the Botany and Chemistry of Hallucinogens. This is the Bible of this field, because it lists virtually the state of the art circa 1980, and compendious bibliography, and unopened mail. And this book, though, this is an expensive academic press, but highly recommended. If you had to have just one book on hallucinogens, this would probably be the one to go for. It's also by Richard Evans Schultes and Albert Hofmann, who some of you may know as the discoverer of LSD and the man who first characterized and synthesized psilocybin. From a slightly more countercultural point of view, the revised edition of the Psychedelics Encyclopedia by Peter Stafford, who some of you may know. And again, this is an effort to be compendious. No one of these books should be taken as gospel. I mean, you want to get it from several different sources before you conclude any given fact is true. But this book is published by Tarcher in LA. I think this is a fairly easily obtained book.
Is that the newest? I did talk to him at the Transpersonal Conference, and he said he was coming out with a revised edition.
That'll be, this is the second edition, and he's going to do a third edition. Yeah. And he's very good about keeping up on the literature and following it through. This is an interesting book. Peter Stafford. Then, for those of you who are more inclined to pharmacology and neurophysiology and that sort of thing, this is a fairly hard book to obtain, but in a way it's never been surpassed. This book is called The Hallucinogens by Hoffer and Osmond. And there was never a revised edition after 1965. Discusses a lot about LSD and psychotherapy, and also has all kinds of strange information that was never again mentioned in the literature, that was just sort of dropped out. So you can read here about, for instance, the hallucinogen dimethyl sulfoxide, where you drink 8 fluid ounces a day for 5 successive days, and then the onset of hallucinations begin that are supposedly quite spectacular. It's just that the notion of drinking 8 fluid ounces of this bizarre chemical compound is not too appetizing. I doubt it. I think you probably have to have a scientific book searcher hunt this one down for you. Hoffer and Osmond, the hallucinogens. And then for sort of the state-of-the-art, in a simple one in one book, is Solomon H. Snyder's book, Drugs and the Brain. And it doesn't simply address hallucinogens. It talks about all kinds of drugs, but explains the mechanism of drug activity, the notion of the lock and key activity of the drug molecule to the synaptic cleft, and it gives you a short basic course in neurology. And Saul Snyder is one of the giants of psychopharmacology, Nobel Prize winner, so forth and so on. So, Drugs and the Brain by Solomon Snyder. Let's see here. Here's another book somewhat on the line of Snyder's book. This is one of the most recent books written on hallucinogens. It's by the editor is Barry Jacobs. Hallucinogens, Neurochemical, Behavioral, and Clinical Perspectives. And as my brother said, all of the uninteresting perspectives are covered here very thoroughly and in detail. And what these books are good for, besides whatever they say, is that they contain excellent bibliography. So tracing a particular problem, you go to these books, and then they direct you to the journal articles that give you what you want to know. Most of the literature of psychopharmacology is in journals, which you will never, as a layman, encounter unless you go to medical libraries and attempt to see these things. Things like Lloydia and Acta Neurologica and all of this, the Journal of Psychopharmacology and this sort of thing. But you can be directed to some of these journals cost as much as $200 and $300 a year to subscribe to. So if you don't want to do that, the bibliography directs you to the articles you need, and you just go to the med library and Xerox them out. It's edited by Barry Jacobs. I'm trying to do this in some kind of reasonable order. Let's see. Then this sort of bridges the gap between pharmacology, sociology, and anthropology. This is Brian Dutoit, I guess, D-U space T-O-I-T. Drugs, Dutoit, Brian Dutoit. Drugs, Rituals, and Altered States of Consciousness. And some of the altered states of consciousness, Let me see if I can make a quick identification here. I think this is actually Banisteriopsis russbiana, which is a rare admixture plant, contains DMT, but has the lanceolate leaf end that distinguishes it from Banisteriopsis caapi. Probably could do 10 years for the book. The publisher on this one is a weird one. It's Balkema, Balkema of Rotterdam. So it's a Dutch publisher. The author's name is Dutoit, D-U-T-O-I-T. Yeah, this is a good one. And so then, sort of moving out of the realm of pharmacology and psychology and into the specifically anthropological stuff, this is one that a number of various contributors, alternate states of consciousness, multiple perspectives on the study of consciousness, edited by Norman Zinberg of Harvard. And this deals not only with shamanic drug usage, but heroin, the heroin subculture, and a number of different things. Urban drug cultures are discussed as well. Mostly a sociological perspective here. Zinberg. And then moving into the more specifically anthropological stuff, in what order? Let's see. Well, here's my favorite one. Before he got into drumming, Michael Harner edited this book, Hallucinogens and Shamanism, Oxford University Press, available in print, in paper. And a number of writers contributed to this. There are about 3 articles on ayahuasca that you just will not find anywhere else. 4 articles. Articles on peyote. A wonderful article by Henry Munn called The Mushrooms of Language. Just a classic article on mushrooms. So this I highly recommend. No, Hallucinogens and Shamanism. Well, to have most of them, that would be a breakthrough. The place I would start would be Moe's in Berkeley, and then Black Oak in Berkeley, and then Green Apple in the city, and you just basically Pellucidar in Albany. The better bookstores with large inventories of used books.